All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee Q&A, your daily dose of coffee Q&A here on the onocoffee channel. I'm Jay, your host, and today we're back Friday, November 14th. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. If you're just joining us for the very first time or watching us on the replay, we do this live stream most every weekday morning. English can be difficult. Monday through Fridays, typically 10 a.m. Eastern. So come join us. And how you doing? Power plant's with us from Japan. How are things? Dark chocolate and coffee is a great pairing. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Power Plant says, IFG. I don't know what that means. Kent, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. So last night, if you saw in the description, last night I was at an event. I was asked to participate in an event at Capital Cigar and Tobacco in Bethesda, Maryland, to offer coffee with a cigar and chocolate tasting experience. And if you're familiar with the cigar world, there's a company called Davidoff, which has been around for decades. Zeno Davidoff founded the company many years ago. And they're one of the most venerable cigar companies in the world. And they originally started making cigars in Cuba. And then in 1991, they decided to move away from Cuba for, I don't really know the reason, but a variety of reasons. They moved away from Cuba and started producing cigars in the Dominican Republic. By a man by the name of Henke Kellner was the guy that was the brainchild behind all of the rolling and mastering of the cigars. I believe Henke Kellner went on to start his own thing in the last several years. But Davidoff has always been general brands in the cigar world. And they also have another component that is very much in the luxury goods. I really first learned about Davidoff many years ago in the 90s. When my girlfriend at the time was like, have you heard of this thing called Davidoff? And I was like, because, the way that it was written, she thought it said Davidoff. And here's the logo. Let me show you the logo. So it says, when you're young, that could be Davidoff. And at the time, they offered and I think they still offer it, a fragrance, a man's fragrance called Cool Waters. And she was all into it. And she was like, you should get it. I was like, oh, should I? It worked wonders. I must say, it worked wonders after I got it. And actually, I was thinking, since I got into coffee, in the coffee world, we don't really wear fragrances because, that can obscure and interfere with your ability to sense tastes and flavors and aromas. So I haven't really worn fragrances in like 27, actually, since I got into food, so 1999. And I wasn't a big fragrance wearer before that. So this morning, as I was thinking about this, I was like, this all started for me with Cool Waters. And so I was like, I probably have that somewhere. And I was looking where I keep some of the fragrances that I still do have. And all of them are like, 20 years old. And I'm looking, and I was like, oh, I don't have any of that. I was like, she kept it. So, Sonia, if you're out there, I want my fragrance back so I can remember those times. Mom's with us. Good morning to you, Mom. Oh, LFG. Oh, LFG. Gotcha. It's so interesting that whole "Let's Go" thing. That I've noticed. It's relatively new. Like, I really started catching on to that phrase when I started watching Airrack, who's a YouTuber here on YouTube, and he makes interesting videos that I kind of like. He's friends. He wanted to like emulate Mr. Beast, and so for me, it's been like I started watching him when he was like maybe 10,000 subscribers. Anyway, but he always liked that phrase. And then I noticed other creators, John Malecki likes to use it. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's cool. I dig it. So anyway, the guys from Capital Cigar and Tobacco, Payam and Tony and Sean, and of course, and George Brightman, who you see here, they were all like, hey, we're doing this event. Would you be interested in coming down and, participating with coffee? And I was like, all right. So what it is, it's basically they have this cigar, and it's called the Escurio. And this is cigar. This is the cigar itself. Capital. Let's zoom in a little bit more here. Same as vamos. I hear you, man. I hear you. I hear you. I like it. I like it. I got to work it more into my lexicon. So this is what's called the Davidoff Escudo Gran Perfecto. And in the world of cigars, this kind of like shape, this like tapered tip and tapered foot. This is the foot. This is the tip. I think that's right. I've been doing cigars way longer than I've been doing coffee, and I still don't know all the correct nomenclature for all of the correct nomenclature for the anatomy. So this shape is called a figurado shape, or what they call perfecto shape. And this is called the Gran Perfecto because it is a thicker ring gauge. This one is, it doesn't say here. It's like, oh, that's what it is. It's 55. And when we talk about gauges, it's based on an inch. So 60 gauge is 1 inch. And then everything else is ratios off of that, right? And so this particular one is 60, 61 right here in the center where it's the fattest. And then it tapers down to like 50 here. And then it tapers down to like, I guess if we consider the actual tip, it would be considered 34, right? It's really small, or maybe actually less. It's probably 30, right? Because some of the thinnest cigars are probably right about here. They make a type of Lancero that can be 38 ring gauge. So, yeah, it's basically, when we think of ring gauge, it's pretty much the same thing as caliber of ammunition, right? So if you think of things in terms of, like, say, 223 Remingtons for like the M16 type of guns versus the 5.56 NATO, when they talk about those kind of things, those gauges tend to be the percent of. No, maybe 223 is not correct. I think that's right because, or no, I'm also thinking of paintball. Paintball, we talk about. We talk things in terms of paintball in caliber as well. So like a paintball will be 68 caliber, right? So it's a little bit larger than this. Anyway, 60 ring gauge here in the center and tapers down. And it's a really lovely cigar with a lot of chocolate notes, some saltiness, some peppers. Leather is some of the tones that people are sensing when they have this cigar. Now, the cigar is interesting because cigars have different components, right? So there's the wrapper that covers everything. There's a binder that kind of is under the wrapper that holds the tobacco that's inside the cigar together. And those are called fillers. And this particular one is kind of interesting. It uses a wrapper that comes from Ecuador. So in many respects, you're going to see that this is making a cigar is very much like blending coffee, right? So you've got a wrapper that's from Ecuador, which is a very lovely wrapper, very nice kind of like rich color here. Actually, I should just take it out. No, I'm not taking it out. Good morning to you, M0. Andrew, good morning to you. Andrew was there last night with us, having a cigar, enjoying things. Proplan says, Arnold loves his stones. Arnold is a good man. He's a good man. He's a good man. But as you can see, it's nice and rich. You zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so nice rich color here. So we got an Ecuadorian wrapper. And inside we have a binder that is from, I believe the binder, if I remember correctly, the binder itself is from the Dominican Republic. Now, when you're smoking a cigar, it's not just the smoke. And you don't inhale, right? It's very much a sensory experience, right? You're really tasting the flavors of the tobacco. And you get that through a variety of ways. Some of it is through your nasal passages, through some of the aromas that way, but a lot of it is sensed on your palate, on your tongue, on the sides and insides of your cheek and things like that, because you're taking in the smoke from the cigar into your mouth cavity, but you're exhaling it. You're just, blowing it out. You're not really exhaling because you're not inhaling it, right? And you just have the flavor of the tobacco. And the flavor of the tobacco, depending on how the tobaccos have been grown, harvested, processed, and fermented, and then blended, and then dried, and then blended, aged, and then dried, and then blended, can have tremendous effects on the experience that you have. And it's really an interesting and sometimes truly wonderful flavor experience. And which is part of the reason why I think I really enjoyed coffee professionally, is because there's a lot of things in my professional life as a coffee person, working with these different coffees of different varieties, different processes, and all that, and blending them together, which is I find a lot of symbiosis or similarities with cigar tobacco. So inside they have these Brazilian tobaccos, right, that are blended together, and a lot of them come from a place in Brazil, in the Bahia region, which is the northern eastern part of Brazil, in a town or area called Todos los Santos, which in English means all the saints. And this place being a more coastal part of Brazil, there's a lot of, like, if you're familiar with scotches, right? Like there's something called a Speyside Scotch, and Speyside in Scotland is a type of Scotch that is produced very close to the shore. So because it's a shore, there's a lot of, winds and residual salts from the ocean that come onto the land. And when you have a Speyside whiskey, you get some like salty characteristics. Same thing in the Todos de los Santos area, right? So Todos los Santos has that same kind of effect on some of their tobaccos. So you do get a little bit of saltiness in the cigar because that salt is in the ground and it comes through the roots of the tobacco plant and gives you that character. So it's very interesting how these all come together. So this Escurio, it was the cigar of the evening, and the idea was to pair it with chocolates from Vosges. And Vosges is a chocolate company based in Chicago, Illinois. And the owner, actually, I've known the owner, Katrina, since her and I both started in our respective industries about the same time. And we met through my friend Philip Preston, who owns a company called Polyscience in Chicago. And we met, he introduced us many years ago. Really, really lovely, lovely person. And Katrina's super passionate about it. But as you can see here, the marketing is beautiful. Like this is a box set that they put together for this event. And Davidoff has gone around the country to promote this event, do this event for cigar lovers multiple times. Actually, I was talking to Alex, the representative, the ambassador for Davidoff last night, and he was like, "Yeah." I said, "How many times have you done this?" He's like, "Probably about 35 times so far." I mean, and I still have a couple more to go. And I was like, So it's been a good event. So there were about 30 people that came out last night. So really nice turnout. And what you get for this is that you get this whole experience with the coffee, with the cigar. You got two different cigars. You get this Gran Perfecto, and I think the other one was a Robusto, which is a kind of this ring gauge here, but instead of being tapered on the ends, it is straight the whole way. Like, and just a little bit thinner, maybe 55. So maybe closer to this point rather than this point, right? And Andrew, you can confirm that what you got the other cigar, because they gave me the gift set to try. So I won't be doing these. I won't be eating the chocolates on the show because, well, I want to enjoy it with the cigar. It's meant to go in progression. But let's see. I don't remember if you can. Oh, yeah, you can't. Well, we'll just open it up. Why not? Just so you can see. I don't know if Andrew remembers some of his tasting notes from the event, but perhaps he might feel like he wants to tell us what he might have sensed. A lot of people really reacted very well to the pairings. At least they nicely package it so it keeps it fresh. But as you can see here, we've got a nice little band. It's purple. Davidoff's colors are kind of this green here, but Vosges is mainly a purple colored company, so that's why it's colored purple. And we've got a little card here, Davidoff Cigars, and this tells you, this is interesting. I didn't see this last night, and but you can see there's actually going to be 4 different chocolates, and there's 2 of each. So there's a Brazil, a Dominican, a Brazil Dominican, and because the Brazil and the Dominican, these are chocolates. These are going to be made from chocolates that are from the same countries that a number of the tobaccos that are inside this cigar are located. That, I think that's interesting. But as you can see here, this one here on the right, or here in the center, is a Brazilian chocolate with ancho chiles, Sri Lankan Ceylon cinnamon, and a 62% cacao dark chocolate. So that's quite interesting. A lot of people really, really enjoyed them. And then the next one is a chocolate from the Dominican Republic. And this particular truffle is made with wild raw flower honey, 45% cacao deep milk chocolate, as well as a little bit of Malden sea salt on the top. So fascinating, fascinating stuff. And people really seem to react very, very well to it. So, but it's really meant to be eaten with the cigar itself. So the chocolates are meant to highlight the flavors of the cigar, and both to complement and contrast with it. Now, when they asked me to come do this, I was like, oh, that'd be very much honored. These are very venerable and very well respected companies. So to be asked to offer coffee along with these products is really kind of an honor. And I'm glad I'm very pleased and very honored that they would think that I'm capable enough to do something like this. Lo and behold, I'm just a charlatan in a black shirt. That's really it. Let me put this back. I'll put that back later. Anyway, so when they called me, I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. Now, of course, Capital Tobacco is kind of far from me as just to run down for the afternoon. They're about an hour. If there's no traffic, I can get there in an hour, maybe hour 20 during most days, and then maybe 2 to 2.5 hours, depending if we were hitting the worst part of DC traffic. But I have a local retailer that sells these cigars, so I went over there. This is like 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago or so, 3 weeks ago. Went over to this local tobacconist and picked up one of these cigars to give it a try, because what I wanted to do was to smoke the cigar, understand the flavors, and then look for a coffee that I have access to right now to pair with it. And this is one of the things, right? Like, so this is the coffee I'm using. This is what's called the Pear notes. This is a sample pulled off the roast that I use for this. And as you can see here, the roast date is 10/31. And when they called me towards the end, well, actually it was at the very end, because I didn't come back from New England until the 28th. So they must have called me like on the 28th or the 29th. And I was like, oh, I better hustle and get to it. So I went through a bunch of coffees. I thought about what we had available in inventory, and I was like, okay, well, I think this might be an interesting one. So I roasted up a little bit of this, a little bit of a couple other coffees, and smoked a cigar to give it a try. And then I guess that must have been on the 30th, because that day I decided to roast this on the 31st, because the important thing for me was that we need to give the coffee time for it to rest, degas, and develop its flavors. Now, we've talked about this on this live stream before, where our general quality control practices in the coffee business are to roast like today, cup tomorrow to evaluate it. But in our class a couple of years ago on the live stream, where we roasted the coffee, tasted it immediately out of the roaster, and then tasted on subsequent days out to like a week, we learned that the flavor became very obscured even 24 hours later. So for me, it was really important to get into that tasting with the coffees that I was doing sample roast on, to know, or to give me a good idea of what would go best with this. And what I liked about this Pear notes was that it had a little bit of salt. There was a little bit of saltiness, strangely enough, but a lot of earthiness, some chocolate, a little bit of leather. So there were some things that kind of like paired well with it, like as a complementary companion flavor. And there were some components that I thought were more contrasty to it, but not too much contrast. Like I don't want to have a lot of contrasty to it, because sometimes, you might not, some people may not enjoy that contrast, right? But the complementary flavors were really what I was after. And so I thought this Pear notes had really nice complementary notes. And this is a nice little coffee. This is a coffee from Jinotega, Nicaragua. Now, I wasn't able to follow the Vosges thing and like match coffees from Dominican Republic or Brazil. I had a Brazil that I had two Brazils. I had a natural and a wash. I didn't like the way they went with the cigar as well as this one, right? So there was a couple of the Brazils, but and I almost decided to go with it, but I thought really this paired better. And this is a small micro lot producer, Maria Jesus in Jinotega, Nicaragua, who makes this pear notes coffee, and it's got some pear notes, which is why they called it a pear note coffee. So it's got a little bit of hints of pear, but also has that earthiness, just a hint of salt, and a little bit of leather in there. So it was like, ooh, it's kind of interesting. And depending on how you roast it, now this one you're going to see, I didn't roast it very dark. I tried to keep it relatively light. Let me just pour this out so you can see. Well, let me catch up on what we're talking about. Oh, sorry. Coffee Cove's with us. What's going on, Coffee Cove? M0 says cigars used to be more expensive than cigarettes. Now, depending on which one you smoke, they are really. What kind of cigarettes are you smoking? Oh, I guess, yeah, cigarettes have gone up. But, comparatively, cigars have gone up as well. Like, it's not the old days when I started smoking cigars in like 1993, you get cigars for like $2 now. Ain't nothing at $2. Ain't nothing at $2. All right, so here's the coffee, and it always looks darker on my reference monitor than it does in real life. So it's a little bit past a light roast, but not terribly medium, I would say. But that's what it looks like. And we're going to brew this up a couple ways, I think. Powerplant says, M0, about once a year, I get a pack of natural spirit purples and sit on a beach and just let them. Beverly points to its overcast and rating. Nice. I hear you. I understand that natural spirits are like truly clean. And when I was growing up, my father was a big cigarette smoker, as people were in like, the 50s, 60s, 70s, into the 80s. And I remember I just never liked it. Like I was never a fan of cigarette smoke. Just totally hated it. But that was part of the world. And I remember like going to it was much later in life, right? Like after the smoking bans came in the 2000s, to think about going out to the club or to the bar and being out all night and coming home and you don't reek of cigarette smoke, like that was weird. Like if I think about my best times at the clubs, like when I was like 17, 18 years old, right? We would go to this club called Signal down in Baltimore. It was an alternative music club, and we were there all night long. And I mean like till 5:30 in the morning. It was an after hours club, right? So there was no alcohol and no drugs, but there was plenty of it, let me tell you. 1980s was a great time to be alive and at the club scene. But anyway, I remember coming home and just falling to bed exhausted and just reeking of cigarettes, you just reeked of it. It was so crazy. I don't miss that part of it, but I hear you. But what I'm leading up to is that years after I got into cigars, one of the things about cigars is that it's all pure tobacco. There's no additives, right? So it's just what they do is they take the tobacco, they harvest it, they process it. How they process to cigar tobacco is they take the leaves that they've cut off the stalk, hang them in a barn to air dry, so they dry out a bit, and then they take them into the warehouses where they put them into these piles. And they've stacked the piles, which in the Spanish-producing countries they call pilones, and they stack them in a way so that it starts to ferment, right? It starts to generate heat and ferment, and they have to manage that, right? Like if you just put them in a stack and let them sit, at some point they will ignite and burn your whole business down, which has happened. So you must rotate the stack. So meaning that you have a stack here that's fermenting, that's heating, that's doing its thing. At some point in time, you've figured out what temperature or whatever they're figuring out, and then you move it and build a new stack so that it cools it all down, gives it more air, and then they continue the fermentation until they reach a point where they're finished of that fermentation. And I don't know how they stop it. Maybe if George is here, he'll be able to tell us more. But you can stop the fermentation, And then it has, like cigars, right? Here's an interesting, so like cigars, after your fermentation period is finished, it has a degassing phase. And while coffee degasses and gives off CO2, tobacco degasses and gives off, I don't know if it actually gives off ammonia, but it smells intensely of ammonia. Like, I remember I was in Nicaragua back in 2011 when my father Cigars had just built their facility. So I called up my friend Pete Johnson, who's the owner of Tatuaje Cigars. And I was like, he happened to be in Nicaragua the same week that I was in Nicaragua. And I was like, hey man, can I come see the factory? He's like, yeah man, come on up. So we drove up from Managua to Esteli, which is about 3 hours from Managua. And it's interesting because if this is the map for you, right? Managua is here on the western coast of Nicaragua, and you drive up on the Panama Highway, and there's actually a town like right about here that splits, right? Goes to Esteli, goes to Matagalpa, right? And they're actually, you get to this point, and then from here it's about an hour to each. So 2 hours up, and then an hour here, and then you go to Matagalpa, where I go to buy coffee, and Esteli is where they make all the cigars. And then somewhere over here is a town called Jinotega, where this coffee comes from, right? So now the big difference, of course, is there's elevation differences, right? So coffee needs to grow at high elevations. So there are mountains, Matagalpa and Jinotega are in the mountains, whereas cigar tobacco, sometimes language is very difficult, needs to grow in a valley, a fertile valley. So Esteli is like this. So you kind of like follow different paths, but it all comes from very similar regions, and it's very interesting. But as I went to my father that trip, they're showing me all over the factory, and like we go into the room where they do all the degassing, and man, it is like intense ammonia. Now it must not be true ammonia because like, if you're breathing in ammonia, it'll kill you. Or maybe there's just not concentrations enough. It will kill you. And eventually, if you stay there all day long, you will die. But it was super intense. Like my eyes are watering. It was really, really, but it's really interesting. A little correlation between the two crops. Andrew says, per Georgia's thickest part of cigar is 55. At least, okay, 55. Right. And as he reads about ripe power plant, cigars and suntan lotion on beach cream. I like that. It's like aromatherapy. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a spring break thing. Spring break. Actually, I never had spring break in the way that most American people of my generation had spring break. Like everybody's heading south to Florida or some beach, or maybe Corpus Christi if you're in Texas. I lived in Honolulu at the time, so I never went. I didn't have to go anywhere. We had beach all year long. We had girls at the beach all year long. I was like, should have gone to the beach more. Power Plant says Speyside whiskey comes from a specific area in Scotland, much like Highland is a region in the much venerated Islay. Oh, nice. Yeah, yes, agreed. I will note that permanently M0 says Speyside whiskey. Yeah, if I really learned more about Speyside. One year I was in Bangkok. We went to the Cohiba Lounge. It's a members only lounge in Bangkok. It's like a club, Cohiba Club, maybe something like that. And my friends there are members. And, we're smoking cigars. And, it's a Cohiba lounge. And so it's all Cuban cigars. And one of my favorite Cuban cigars is something called the Monte Cristo No. 2. And when you get a really good example, God, it's sublime. But the problem with Cuban cigars is that it's very inconsistent in production and quality. So you may get one cigar of, like I said, Monte Cristo No. 2 that is superb. Like life mind-boggling superb, right? And then the next one you get from another batch is like, what is this rubbish? Like, what is this, right? So, but we were there and we had beautiful examples of these Monte No. 2s. And as I was getting mine, and the nice things, they have these lovely attendants who cut your cigar. They light your cigar for you. It's like, this is like a godsend. Anyway, my friend was like, you're having that Monte 2, you should try it with the Spey Burn Speyside. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, there's the little bit. So he started explaining to me about the saltiness and why the Speysides have these salty characters, and the Spey Burn is the one to try. And he was like, try that with your cigar because it'll match. And I was like, huh? Man, it matched like a mother. I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh. Great. Fantastic. But only if the Monty number 2 is a superb. Like if it's the other stuff, like one year my friend and I, we went in and bought a box from a place called Gerard in Geneva, Switzerland. And, Gerard's a great purveyor. Like he's a great, great tobacconist. Hand selects all of his cigars, gets rid of the rest, only offering the best. And we ordered some from him one day. Cost us a ridiculous amount of money. And then we got them and we split the box and we're smoking these things. Like I smoked mine like a mad dog, and my friend Jean-Matt smoked it like a mad dog. Within like 2 weeks, we were finished. Like I was like, we need more. But Gerard's expensive. So we called up Puro Express in Spain. It's like, send us a box. Send us 2 boxes, right? So we got a box each. Cheaper. And man, dog rockets. Just like, this was terrible. Like, I mean, you could sometimes age a cigar and improve its performance. I smoked a couple from that box, and I was like, and my friend Jean-Max smoked a couple from his box, and both of us were like, these are terrible. I put it down for a year. Terrible. Never did those cigars ever recover. It was just a total waste of money. So if you get a nice Monte Cristo number 2, Spade and Speyside, that's a beautiful, beautiful combination. Power Plant says also Scotch is never spelled with an E. Should be whiskey without the E. I hear you. Anton, how are you? Good to see you. George says the actual gift bag includes 2 other Gran Perfectos, but the Robusto Tubo I got for you last night. Thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted something different because I bought 2 of these when I bought for my tasting. So this is the other one. But if you guys are wondering, this is actually $25 a cigar. So it's not terribly cheap. Like in the world of cigars, even cigar smokers who've been doing it for a long time are like, "Whoa, $25." It's a lot of money, right? Like you want it to be more, like you want it to be like cheaper. I want everything to be cheaper. Power Plant says it is a pedantic note. They make a big deal. I mean, all enthusiasts make big deals out of everything. George says, by the way, I made a mistake. The Gran Perfecto is a 60 ring gauge at the wide point. No worries. Power Plant says, like the good bonbons. Yes, absolutely. There's Keone. Over to you. Keone, I have a question for you, actually. Since you might be you might know this. Andrew was just in New Zealand for the last month and a half, and he brought some coffee back. And I was when he gave it to me last night, I was thinking about using it in a show. I was actually thinking about using it today, and I was like, we're talking about his cafe experience, and I decided I'm going to wait because I wanted to bring something here. I mean, you might know this, or maybe you could ask some of your friends if you had the time to answer. But I'm curious to know, if you go to a coffee shop in New Zealand, are there traditional Maori foods that you find, or Maori inspired foods that are part of a coffee shop menu? Maybe some kind of take on a cinnamon bun or a croissant, or maybe they have something actually Maori of origin that people normally eat at a coffee shop. I was looking online last night when I got home until 2 a.m. trying to understand. But since I don't know New Zealand and I don't know Maori culture very well at all, I don't really know what I'm looking at or trying to understand how it fits into the whole scene there. But they had something that they called, I can't remember how the saying in Maori, but basically a fry bread, and evidently they take the fry bread into yeasted dough and they slice it after they cook it, butter and a plum jam. So if you might know, or maybe you could ask someone, let me know. I'm curious to know, are there something that's very Maori identity in a coffee shop menu in New Zealand? Anton says, it's a curious outfit. This is my Western shirt. I have a couple Western shirts, and unfortunately, I am now at a point where it's just a big bag on me. I never got to use it because it was a little bit tight on me before. Now it's super baggy, and I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do now? I'm going to have to donate it because it's like, look, the sleeves are like folded in. It's all like saggy. Like you want it to be like, I have it tucked in and pulled back just to try to make it a little bit more. But yeah, it's a nice, very Western, very Western. You should see my boots. All right, let me get. Oh, Russell likes the Western. Thank you, Russell. Appreciate that. M0 says, that's what I meant to say. Just think about volume 1 cigar. Given the volume, must contain more tobacco than a pack of cigarettes. You know, that's a good question. I don't know if George has said anything about that, but I don't know. I mean, like by weight, I think it's maybe half a pack. But the difference is we're not inhaling. Oh, and that's what I meant to say earlier. When I was, several years into my cigar smoking, I got somebody was smoking a cigar. No, I had that's what it was. I was out with some friends and they were smoking cigarettes. And I had the feeling I would like to have the taste of tobacco. So I said, hey, man, can I get one of those from you? And I puffed on it a little bit. I lit it up, puffed it. And the big difference between like cigarettes, and this is probably not true for the American spirits, but for most commercial cigarettes, man, the moment, and I didn't inhale, I just kept it, I wanted the flavor of the tobacco. The moment that it filled my palate, oh man, it was like coating my mouth in chemicals. Like I could taste whatever additives they give to the cigarette tobacco, like it was all over my palate. Like, oh God, this is terrible. Like it wasn't, and cigarette tobacco, especially the Virginia leaf that they use, tends to be in flavor intensity much more milder than a lot of the cigar tobaccos. So a very different experience, one that I never wanted to repeat again and have it. And that's not to say that, you shouldn't smoke cigarettes. It's up to you. You do what you need to do. But as a flavor experience, it just was not. It was a flavor experience that demonstrated to me why I should never have that flavor experience again. But I think that my understanding from what my friends who smoke cigarettes say, that American spirits are vastly different than I don't even know, the Marlboros and Salems and Camels of the world. Kerry says, when I was in high school, one of my football coaches smoked a pipe, and although I never got to smoking anything, I enjoyed the smell of pipe smoke. Oh, piping's fun. Pipe guys are interesting dudes. Like they're very particular. Like there's typically a separation between pipe guys and cigar guys because it's different disciplines, right? Like I think there's a level of geekiness, nerdiness that comes to with being a pipe person, so that you don't necessarily. You're not that necessarily geeky, nerdy as a cigar person. Although if you hang out with my friends in Hawaii that are cigar smokers, they're very like the amount of knowledge my friends in Hawaii know about cigars is like, whenever I hang out with them, I'm always like, man, these guys know cigars. Like they know the minutest of details. It's like, I don't know, there's something about Honolulu people that makes them a little bit more, detail oriented when it comes to whatever their pursuits are. Proplan says, they seem to argue that because they don't inhale into their lungs, it is not as bad. Oh, I don't say it's not as bad. It's just a different experience. Some people aren't into the cigar gauge in one price, which is a mistake. But hearing them, George says, what's most important is to monitor the temps of the lines. Since it rises too high, you'll lose all the tobacco. It will develop all flavors and becomes okay. I didn't know that. I mean, it makes sense, but I had never even thought about that. Proplan says, yeah, pipe tobacco always seems to smell lovely. It might be chemical flavorings, but it makes for nice secondhand smoke. I agree. I do like that. M0 says, dog rockets is new terminology. I have a good weekend to you. Johnny says, most coffee shops will have sweet potato items, pavlova or meat pies. Sweet potatoes are traditional food from. I saw that in one of the things that I was reading. But are we talking like sweet potato like the Japanese do it, where they basically just baking the sweet potato and eat the sweet potato straight? I will look up more of that, the pavlova and the meat pies. Okay. All right. So let's get into making the coffee, because we're not going to be able to smoke the cigar. Like, I don't smoke in the house because I smoked one time when I first started smoking cigars many years ago. I was living in an apartment in Honolulu, one of these apartments that don't have a balcony. And I was like, I'm going to try it. I smoked. I laid up in my apartment, smoked, thought that I was a big man. Problem is, there's no way for the smoke to escape. So my apartment reeked of stale cigar smoke for like 2 weeks. Never did that again. I was like, this is no good. This is no good. After that, I found a cigar shop, started going there on the regular, and that was it. All right, let's make some coffee here. We're going to make the coffee in 2 ways. Here we have time. We're going to brew coffee regular. So I've got the Benjerong ODZ, thank you, Connie. And we're going to use that with the Monet base, which I totally still love. It's still my favorite brewer. And we're going to get our coffee here. We're going to need 24 grams of coffee. We have coffee, 10.5 grams, 19 grams. 24.3. We need our grinder. Jack up our heat again. Now, yesterday with this grinder, we did 2 grinds. We did one at 5, and then we did one at 7, and the 7 wasn't materially different, right? So we're going to go even coarser now. I'm going to go up here to 9. Like, we're way coarse, right? Way, at least on the die, we're way coarse, but I don't think it's going to be very far off. Okay, now we're going to get the Tefet Abaca filters. Here. All right, so now I need to tare 24 point. It wants to do 24.1, but or maybe not. But close enough, close enough. So there we are. Now let us shake, shake, shake. Anton says, my people are probably Lord of the Rings readers. That's a good one, man. That's a good one. That's a good one. And I think you're not far off. Not far off. Kelly says that, no, they make pastries out of the sweet potato. Make pastries. Are there any kind of particular pastries do you know of? Like any style? I'll look it up. But if you know any particular style, that would be helpful to guide me in my search. I will try to make some to try with this coffee. That's my idea. All right, so we got our water is boiling. And now to hit that button. And here we go. A good saturation here. Now we're going to try to see if we can maintain a pace of about 100 grams per minute or so. I wonder if it's harder to do that because this spout has less flow rate than, let's say, the Hario Buono kettle. I'm just thinking now, I wonder if that might be part of the reason we're having a little bit, sometimes we'll have a little bit longer brew times. But let's see. George has to run for a call for Jose Blanco. I'll tell the doctor I said hello. The professor, not the doctor, the professor. Jose Blanco, for those who may be familiar, he is one of the venerable cigar industry people. Really, really great guy. Like I remember first meeting him. When I met him, he was already like a legend, and he was super, super nice and super kind to me, and always very friendly to me every time we would see each other. It's interesting. You meet some people in the business that are at the pinnacle of what they do. Like Jose Blanco was like that. And then many years ago when I was starting out in 2007, I was in Ethiopia for what was then called the East African Fine Coffee Conference. And I was standing in line at registration, and standing in front of me was Ernesto Illy Jr., the owner of Illy Cafe, and his wife. And at the time, he must have been in his late 70s or mid 70s or something like that. He was pretty old. I mean, he was older. And I'm just standing behind him. I knew who he was, right? I was like, oh, this is Ernesto Illy. It's amazing. And he turned around after a few moments and he was like, hello, I'm Ernesto. And I was like, whoa, well, I'm Jay. This is my wife. I was like, oh my gosh, man. We proceeded to talk for a few moments while we were in line, but he was super nice. And I was like, wow, man, I can't believe you actually came and introduced yourself to me. That was very, he didn't have to do that. I'm literally at that time, I was really a no one in the business, just starting out. Only 2007 was nearly 5 years into it. All right, so we've got our coffee. That was a pretty good pace. So we're finishing up now. It's dripping, finishing. So at 3:30. So all right, maybe we can go back. So we're at 9 on the scale. Maybe we can go back to 8. Somewhere between 8 and 9, I think, might give us a little bit. I'd like to extend it just a little bit longer. Right? And I got to remember with this Kogu kettle to keep up a good pace. All right, let's get rid of that. Let's have a taste of this coffee, see where we are. I'm going to put the cap on it to help hold in the heat. Here is our elixir. Anton says that dripper really is insane. It totally is. It totally is. I would be afraid to drop it with my coffee jitters. I'm every time I move it, I'm scared. I'm terrified of it. Don't let the cool demeanor fool you. I mean, I'm like, there's actually a moment when I was pulling it off, I was like, there was a part of me that was like, I could just toss it. I was like, no, you can't toss that thing. I mean, actually, I think if I just gave it a light toss, it probably would be fine. I mean, the ceramic the porcelain seems very solid, but you're just like, oh, you don't want it. It would be a monumental task to get another one to replace it. So. Oh yeah, there's that earthiness, leather, dark chocolate, just a little hint of salt in there. Oh, that's very nice. I gotta say, I was surprised. Whenever I do tasting events like this, I do worry a bit about how people will receive it. Will they taste the coffee? Will they receive the coffee in the way that I interpreted it myself, Or am I just living in a bubble and I have no idea what I'm doing, right? That's always a concern. It's like, oh, will they react well? And happily, people seem to very much enjoy it. Like I brought some bags down to sell, sold them all out. I should have brought more. I could have sold more bags, but live and learn. Next time we do this, I'll bring more bags. Of course, next time I do this, I may make a complete mistake and totally misgauge what I'm doing, and nobody will like the pairing and they won't buy anything. So there's always that possibility. But what we're going to do now is we're going to take this coffee. We're going to leave that here for a moment, and we're going to make an espresso with the same beans to see the difference in perhaps how you might want to utilize a coffee such as this. How does it change? How does it, how does it perform differently? So we're going to take our coffee, and I'm going to put it in the grinder. I've already cleared out the grinder from the espresso roast. I'm hoping, now this is where we're going to get into some trouble, I think. The beans, so the one thing about the Pear Notes coffee is dramatically larger in physical size than the beans that are in the blend. And I mean dramatically different size. So I'm going to leave the current setting and see how it does. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. Probably won't. But let's see. Let's see here. Let's go here to the side camera. I still have the raisins from the other day soaking away. There's our mound. And the nice thing about this one, there's not really any clumping, and there's no dips or valleys in this particular one. So it's just kind of it's just a little bit mounded this way, right? So we're just gonna work our way around it just to make sure that everything is leveled out. And I'm gonna put a little bit in the center. I like to put a little bit in the center just so that when I compress it, it will kind of compress, right? Yeah, that totally makes sense, right? Totally compress it. It will compress. Let's put that on top. I can tell by the way, whenever I put the portafilter on top, I can tell by the feeling on these two fingers in opposing positions, the height of this edge to the rim of the basket. I can tell if I have maybe too much, like right now, I feel like I have maybe too much coffee in here, or maybe too little, or just right. There's a certain amount of height that you get used to that that you just feel. And what I'm also doing while I'm feeling around it is also making any kind of adjustments to the level of the temp. And then now, come back in. A little compression and a twist to finish. And that was terrible. Totally off on that. So it was actually canted this way when I looked at it, probably because I was holding it up like this and wasn't paying attention. So what I did is, some people might be tempted just to redo it, but I'm not going to do that because we don't have a tremendous amount of this coffee. So I just compressed it again and then pushed it to level it out. All right, let's see about our shots. Yeah, it's definitely full because... Whew. I'm going to make that work. Now we should have a pretty slow flow because there's a lot of no, Jack, not bad. Maybe because larger bean, maybe it's a little bit larger in grind particulate size. But look at that flow. Oh, that looks nearly like perfect now. Huh. It's the best shot we've made all week. That looks pretty good. Let's have a look here. Oh man, that's almost perfection. You know, I could tell you that it's total expertise and mastery of the barista arts and crafts, or just, you know, it just so happened. Oh yeah, that's good. Much more intense, of course, espresso, much more intense. So now, while this coffee, this version of it, definitely is more mellow. Like this has an intensity of brightness that's not real. There's a little bit of brightness here, but this has an intensity of brightness on the palate, but nice balance. The body is kind of light. It feels lighter here. Now the body is about the same. Body is about the same, but of course intensity is going to be different. More concentration of the what do you call it? The brighter notes. I think that there's a little bit heightened saltiness. The leather notes are kind of downplayed, and then the chocolate is a little bit different. The way that it performs. Definitely the more intensity of the brightness is what's dominating in the espresso version of it. But let us do a little bit more tasting. We're going to do our short Americano. So, Power Plant says, if you want to trip yourself out, read about the beginnings of modern advertising on Madison Avenue. Ooh. All right, I have to check it out. We are so suggestible, and they figured out how to read our sub and unconscious minds. Oh, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, to be honest. Okay, so, here's our puck. Let's look at our puck. Nice and dry. Good, very good compaction. Like there's almost no give when I'm pressing on it. So if you knock it out, you can see that it's clean. And there's a little dot of like oil there, so just a little hint of over extraction happening here, but pretty much very clean and very stopped at the right moment. And I think that a big part of the battle of making nice espresso is stopping the shot at the right moment when you have all that the coffee has to give and you've captured that in the cup. You don't want to go beyond that because, you know, it just gets to be not so tasty. Not so tasty. There's very nice aromas coming off of the grind as we're grinding. So as you can see here again, now this mounting is a lot more uniform, the way that it fell over. So there's evidently, you know, you can see by the performance of how it falls into your portafilter, it kind of gives you an indication of how much static energy is happening in your grinder at that moment. So I'm just going to move it around a little bit. Actually, this is pretty high. I'm going to get rid of just a little bit of it, and I'm going to use a finger and curve it like that. And I'll change the curvature depending on how much I want to. If I want to get rid of all of it, I'll just keep it flat, and then depending on how much I want to remove. So I remove that much. I'm going to work it around again just to give me a little bit of mound in the center again. And it doesn't have to be a perfect mound. Like that's not a perfect mound. I'm going to use our little C plus tamper or whatever they call it. Again, feeling on the sides. This one I can feel here, right? By using my opposing fingers, I can feel that there is less coffee in this than there was in the last one. Not a lot less, just a hair less, because the height of this versus the rim is just a little bit lower. Again. Okay. Clean off the wedges. Flush the root head. Oh, we need to have some water in our. I can leave that there. We need to have some water for our Americano. see that, but as you can see here, the water line is just right about there. That's a dangerous situation waiting to happen. Like I really had it packed because it's like really difficult to do it. Give it to me, baby. And so you see it's running a little bit faster this time, right? That little bit of change. So if I want to correct that, like look at that, that's pretty fast now. I hope that's good. So just by that little teeny amount of difference in coffee, we can see the flow rate change. So how would we address this in future shots? I would probably need to actually, you can see here, pretty good. The crema is pretty, oh, you didn't see that, but the crema is pretty good. However, oh, wrong camera. However, it's already breaking, right? This is not ideal. We want this level of thickness of crema across the top of this 6-ounce cup. We want it to be the same. We want it to look as though it was a huge espresso, right? To me, that is a successful Americano. This is not a successful Americano. Now, how would I address this? Like, let's say if I was to make another one, I would address this by changing the grind. Now I would decide to change the grind. I would go a little bit finer on the grind settings so that I could use less coffee, but get more resistance. Right? That would be how I would approach the next time, the next shot doing this. Andrew says, suggestible, how much was the Davidoff rep leading people's response or what they were really... I think there's a lot of that. But I also think that it's one of those things where when you're in your group setting, such as we had like with 30 people, and you're leading the tasting, you kind of have to like, most people are very hesitant to give their opinion because they don't want to be wrong, right? That's the one thing. You're with these tasting experts, brand experts, and you're asking, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? I even my role when I'm doing tastings with people, it can be difficult to get people to feel comfortable enough to share what they think. Like the one guy that worked at that was participating in the tasting, that was one of the guys that works at a Capitol, the guy with the orange vest. Like he was giving his thoughts. He said cherry as a component that he identified in the flavor of the cigar. And Alex was surprised because he had never heard that before. And so that's one of the things that I think is like in the people's mind. It's like, everybody wants to kind of fit in. Everybody wants to feel safe and not necessarily put themselves out there. Because, if you look at any like online forum, you may ask a question or have a thought, and there's always somebody out there that's more than willing to ridicule you for it, right? Because you don't know enough or you're just dumb. And so I think that's the kind of environment that we foster. So people are, I think, naturally tend to be hesitant to give their thought because they don't want to be ridiculed or thought of as being stupid, right? So I think when you're leading a tasting, that's one of the more difficult things to overcome is to try to create an environment where you can feel free to say, like, I remember some of the tastings that we would hold at Spro, I would be, and most everybody that does a tasting at Spro is of course a consumer and not just a consumer, not even enthusiasts of coffee, just a consumer of coffee. And like, we would tell them, we'd do these cuppings, I'd be like, well, tell me what you think and describe the coffee in any way that you think, that in any way that you can express it. And I've had people tell me things like, and I would encourage them, anything, colors, music, whatever it makes you feel, let's hear it. And I've had people tell me colors like purple, yellow. And I remember one guy was like, man, I taste this, I feel like Def Leppard. And I was like, Def Leppard. Hey, all right. And as the tasting leader, or maybe the expert, I may not agree. Like, I don't think Alex agreed with the cherry identification. But you don't. I mean, like everybody's palate. But like even he was acknowledging to everyone, encouraging by saying this is that everybody's palate is different. So while we may have these particular notes that we say that this product may have, that you may find, those are the ones that tend to be very readily apparent, that are easy to identify. But everyone's palate is different, right? Like Some people love fried chicken. Other people hate Brussels sprouts, right? Or hate fried chicken too. So everyone has a different interpretation. So, you kind of have to try to accommodate that and let people feel that, hey, you know what? I hate Popeyes. And, you have to be okay. You have to try to make it seem like it's okay with that. It's not okay to hate Popeyes, but you don't want to tell people that, right? All right, so let's have a taste of this. Yeah, see, it's good. But the shot is not as good. Like, this is a good shot. Like, this is very good. Intense, thick, robust. This should be as good if the shot was as good, but it's not. It's got a little bit less coffee, a little bit thinner. The crema breaks, and you can actually taste that in the way the cup tastes. And maybe if I hadn't had the espresso and didn't know these other coffee versions of it, this would be probably okay, fine. But it's not all it could be. And this is why, like I've talked about in the past, when you're the barista making the drinks, this is where it all counts. Right? Like, sure, I could serve this with the broken crema. And I think most people would try it and they would like it. They'd be like, that's good. I enjoyed it. But if you had the crema that this had, and it's super intense and super beautiful, then they're like, right? And that's what you want. Like, that's what I want. I want people to be like, fuck, this is good, right? That's the whole game there, right? Like, and I can't say that, we're 100% or even maybe even 90%. We're not able to hit that. But that's the intention. That's the goal, right? That's what I think, separates a barista from a true barista, right? The one that can look at a drink, prepare it, look at it, and decide whether or not it's worthy of serving to a paying guest or just to a guest. And do they have the temerity to pass on that and make another? Or do they work for an organization that has the fortitude to encourage them to do that? That's what I always think about. Powerplant says, it's true we are very weak to authority figures, and it is sales technique to explain the history and provenance of things to make them seem more special and worth the money. True. Personally, I never look at tasting notes before I try coffee or wine in order to avoid being, and I think that's a good way to go. I think there's no reason that you necessarily need to look at tasting notes, especially one thing to consider is that coffee is actually, this is something Andrew and I were kind of touching on in our discussion last night, that coffee is and even Alex and I were talking about this to a certain extent, coffee is such a different product to serve. Like, for example, let's say, here. Like this. This is a bottle of the Black Maple Hill bourbon, Kentucky Straight bourbon. I have had, I'm not a big drinker, so I've had this for years, literally years, sitting here. Now, this particular bourbon, which is a handmade sour mash, was aged in white oak casks for however many years, right? When you're making liquors, you are, all the aging of that liquor is happening in the barrel, right? Because that's how they get this tawny color, because the white oak barrels are charred on the inside, and it imparts flavor as well as color, this caramelized color to it. All of the goodness of aging in a barrel happens in the barrel. Once you take it out of the barrel, and it's in this case 47% alcohol. So when you take it out of the barrel, blend it with water to get the right percentage that you're trying to hit, 47.5%, and then you put it in a bottle. It's done. Theoretically will never change, ever. It's going to be like this, done. You just pour it and drink, and everyone will have a consistent experience. In a group, we just pour it all and have that consistent experience. Wine is almost the same, right? Like let's say like you have this, wine's a little bit more tricky. And like let's say you have this nice, one of my favorite wines. This is the Chateau de Beaucastel, a Chateauneuf du Pape. I'm actually more of a Rhone wine guy than a Burgundy or Bordeaux guy. I love this. God, that's why it's an empty bottle sitting on the shelf. There's specifically the Chateau de Beaucastel. Like this is almost any year will do because it's such a nice soft wine. Anyway, forget that. So you have to with wine you have to store it well. And otherwise it could go bad. You have to store it in a certain way so that the cork doesn't dry out and doesn't like get oxidized and gets all this problem. And then you want to, depending on the age, you want to maybe decant it and let it to aerate and come alive, and then you serve it. But it's a relatively simple process and not terribly difficult, even though a lot of people are intimidated by doing those things because they're like, oh, there's a whole world of wine. There's all these. Do I have the right glassware? Yeah, you have a cup. You got plenty of glassware. So that you pour and then you serve. But when it comes to coffee, like the winer, the vintner, the vigneron will put it in a bottle and you're done. Go. In coffee, the producer sends the coffee. It's still not done. The roaster has to receive it, keep the green in a proper conditions. Everyone's keeping their stuff in proper conditions, especially wine. But keep the greens in proper condition, roast them properly, and then ship them out in a timely manner to whoever's going to be making the coffee. And then that coffee has to be made by some schmo at a bar, like myself. And at any point in time, that schmo, me, could mess it up. Maybe the wrong water, maybe the wrong temperature water, maybe the wrong grind, maybe the wrong amount of water to coffee. Man, it's just so many variables in making coffee that are so difficult to give a beautiful experience. So it's really, in many respects, I think in many respects, it's very difficult to be a competent barista and deliver quality drinks to your guests on a consistent level, just because there's so many more variables at play in the actual serving of the beverage, right? Wine and whiskeys are relatively simple products to serve. Like I said, with wine, there's certain things you may want to do to like enhance the flavors of the wine, but it's kind of done. Right? Whiskey is definitely done. Like it's pretty much pour the whiskey, done. Put it in a nice glass, all good, all good. Right? So I don't know where I'm going with that, but that was just a thought. Powerplant says, I've often mentioned a coffee has slight marijuana skunk. Whoa. Notes or whiffs, fecal notes, and people don't like that at all. I'll be honest, I have not noticed coffees that have had any of those flavored or aromatic notes. I'm interested to see what that's like because, what is it like? When I taste, like I hear you on the marijuana. I mean, I understand the marijuana thought because when I taste heavy hops IPAs, which I don't like at all. I don't like IPAs. I'm not a hoppy kind of lover. Like all that bitterness is like some people hate Popeyes. I hate hops, right? And all these people that hate Popeyes, I don't get it. But yeah, the hoppiness, when I taste like heavy hops IPAs, man, to me, that's like drinking liquid marijuana. You're like, but next time you run across that, make a note of it and let me know what that is. So maybe I can try to find one. Because I'm always curious to see like any kind of aberration, at least to my mind, an aberration, so that I can have at least the cataloging of it, right? I want to experience as much as possible so that I can be a little bit more, hopefully more informed about things, right? Like, so even if it's bad, I want to know what the experience is like. Because I do believe that you can't know good unless you know bad. Well, to a certain extent. Anton says, I look at tasting notes when I try to pick coffee. I'm not looking for specific tasting notes, but I avoid roasts that say chocolate. Coffee expensive, so I do pay attention to what about. You don't like chocolate? You're German. I don't understand. No, I get it. I get it. And no, I think that's an important point to make because, when you're considering a coffee, like I think it is good to look at the general taste notes to know, like, is it going to be in your wheelhouse? Like if you're someone that doesn't like the notes of chocolate in your coffee, yeah, you don't want to buy anything that has chocolate notes in it. Like for me, if it's like I just said with the IPAs, like I don't buy IPAs. I don't even order IPAs. I wouldn't drink IPAs because I already know now that I don't like it. So why waste my time? So I totally understand. I totally agree with you on that. But I don't. But I also think that it's important. And what I was leading up with all this talk about the preparation is that now that I remember where my train of thought was going, is that the tasting notes that are on packaging and on websites, one thing you don't know is that you don't know when those were made, right? Are they actually tasting notes from the roaster or the QC guy that's tasting the actual roast that they're listing on the website today? Or is it tasting notes from the sample roasting and tasting that they had when the coffee arrived? Or is it the tasting notes that the green buyer wrote when they were at origin tasting the coffee and decided to buy the coffee? These are all different. I mean, they could all have very similar characteristics and flavor notes, but they could also be vastly different or dramatically different. And when they wrote those notes, that coffee is in a constant state of change, right? It's always changing. So by the time you get it, it could have been months ago when that tasting note was written. So your coffee experience may be very different, but I think it's good to use those tasting notes just as a guide to help inform you whether or not, because we're all very similar in that at the very least we're trying to mitigate having a bad experience, right? So I think that's an important consideration. Anton says, just so I meet my personal preferences, I don't want to spend a month drinking. Oh yeah, absolutely, totally understand. Proplan says, unless specified, spirits are blended to make a unified taste across the bottles. I hear you. But I'm saying that it's just that it's consistent, right? Oh, one more thing before I'm going to head off. I wanted to show you this last thing. So they gave to all the attendees, they also got this little kit here that I thought was kind of fun. It was kind of fun kit that I thought that I was going to use here on the show, meaning that I was going to use but it's a Davidoff Escurio set. Now, if you went to this tasting, there's probably a couple more around the country, some depending where you are. It was $100 for 2 cigars, the full tasting of the chocolates, and then this gift set. And this gift set has a nice little, you can see on the side of here, the etching matches the logo of the Escurio, right? And so this is a thermal, anodized aluminum, laser etched with this rubberized grip here, thermal bottle, right? Stainless interior. That was kind of nice. And a little carabiner, nicely done carabiner here. Oops. I should have paid attention to how I pulled it out of here. And then, of course, there's two twin cups. And so you've got a little cigar rest. So, that works basically. You put that in here. So you can have your beverage, smoke your cigar, have a place to put it. So if you're sitting it down, you have a place to put it. And then if you want to clip this onto your belt, so as you're walking around on your way to your picnic, so with your loved ones, if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend and you want to have a cigar and maybe coffee with them, this is the perfect companion. So that was a nice little extra gift set. And I was very thankful and very pleased that the guys from, I think that goes in like this, from Capital were gracious enough to let me have one of the gift sets. Like that. Put that away. Andrew says, serious swag, not another trucker's cap. Yeah, what? I would not expect any less from. I would be disappointed if Davidoff gave us just a trucker's cap. For those who may not be familiar, Davidoff is as you probably have surmised by the way that the packaging and everything looks, as well as when I said the price of the cigar by itself is $25. So $50, you got $50 in cigars plus the chocolates and this and the experience. That was a nice deal. But Davidoff is one of the more luxury brands. They even have a whole nother, while cigars is a big part of their business, they have a whole nother luxury side, like I said earlier, where they do fragrances and accessories and luxury goods. So nice quality products based in Switzerland. This particular gift set was not made in Switzerland, made in China. Not for sale. So very special. But anyway, I think that's all I got for you guys today. Where is Davidoff based? It's based in Switzerland. In I want to say Geneva, but I don't know if that's correct. And yeah, but nice quality stuff. And I'm sure I know you don't smoke cigars, but if you're interested, I'm sure for sure they have Davidoff products in Japan somewhere. I just don't know exactly where. They may even have a boutique, but the boutique would probably be in Tokyo or maybe even Osaka. But yeah. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I have for you today. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. As always, we're a little bit longer than typical, but about the same as yesterday. Back again on Monday. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I've got more stuff that we're going to be working on. A little bit to New Zealand, a little bit of New England. So, Kent, good to see you. Power Plant, Andrew, Keone, everyone. Come on, have a wonderful day out there and see you next. And see you next time.